Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
If I had been born in Eastern Europe in the 19th century, like my great-great-grandfather was, I probably would have become a rabbi. And if I had been born in Bethlehem in the centuries before Christ, like my 100 times great-grandfather may have been, I might have become a prophet. And if I had been born in ancient Africa, like my greatest of grandmothers certainly was, then I would have become a shaman. But I was born in New York in 1990, and when it came time for me to decide who I wanted to become, I looked at the various truth peddlers and storytellers that my society acknowledged as legitimate: the priests, the novelists, the mathematicians, YouTubers. And I decided to become a scientist. At least, that's what I started aiming for. Science, it seemed to me, offered the best chance at providing a truthful answer to the only question that really mattered. What does it mean to be alive? Perhaps I should have become a shaman instead. As scientists, we face a religio-poetic task that is of a similar magnitude as the one that faced Christ. Religiopoesis. Let's break that word down.
So ligate means to tie together. It's the same anchor as ligament, ties bones together. Religate means to bring back together again.
That was Ursula Goodenough, founder of the Religious Naturalist Association. I'll get back to what she has to say in a moment, but let's take a look at that second part of the word, poesis. Poesis is derived from a Greek term which means create, so altogether, religiopoesis is bringing back together again creation, or more simply, the making of religion. Religion is not something that has always been. Humans have made and remade religion as the times demand. 2,000 years ago, the Romans conquered the world and connected different cultures in ways that had never before been possible. Roman conquest and globalization caused a crisis of faith from which Christianity emerged. Today, we face a similar crisis of faith. The world is more connected than ever before, connected by a suite of technologies which were developed using a philosophy, science, which has systematically failed to find evidence for anything supernatural, like the God of Christ, even as it allows us to perceive a shared and varied humanity more universal than even the early Christians could have imagined. But just like the sentiments of those early Christians, this now scientific understanding of our shared humanity is prompted by a story. Here's Ursula again.
Scientific inquiry has very recently, in fact, provisioned us with what I would say is a mind-blowing new core narrative.
This narrative starts 13.7 billion years ago with the Big Bang and leads us from supernova to nebula to solar system to the first primitive cells to plants and animals and then language and then religion. But there's a problem. Thus far, at least, this core narrative has been poorly told. It's very detailed and empirically verified, but it usually lacks numinosity, at least when compared to some other stories that we've been told. Here's me from last year. Let me tell you another story. There were these humans named Adam and Eve, and they lived in a garden. And one day, they ate some fruit, and then they had to leave. Have you heard this story before? When was the first time you heard it? The best stories are the stories that get told by everyone, the stories that bury themselves so deep that everybody knows them. This is the religiopoetic task that we face as scientists, to tell our story so well that it pervades the human world. Telling this story effectively won't be easy. There are globally entrenched systems of oppression which rely on counter-narratives which claim that some human lives are more important than others. But a good story takes a long time to tell. It took the story of Genesis 3,000 years to become what it is today, and we've only just begun. The Religious Naturalist Association is a community of humans dedicated to telling this story numinously. That is, to tell this story that reaches from the Big Bang to us in a way which is not just factually correct, but which also makes us feel that we are connected to the infinite, and which motivates us to fight injustice where it remains. Let's now go back to Ursula Goodenough to finish the video.
So I'm going to close with two versions of religious naturalism, one without God language and then one with God language. I have no idea where you come out in your religious beliefs, and so I want to give you both perspectives. So this is something a bunch of us wrote up a while back. We find our sources of meaning within the natural world, where humans are understood to be emergent from and hence a part of nature. Our religious quest is informed and guided by the deepening and evolving understandings fostered by scientific inquiry and the mindful understandings inherent in our human traditions. I believe that evolution is the way that God has created the world. God has woven the creation on the web of emergence, adaptation, and natural selection. We are very far from understanding the significance of this aspect of God's creation, and also far from integrating this truth into our system of beliefs. For those of us who begin with God, the challenge is to recognize that our scientific understandings are revelation. Revelation of what God has done, what God is doing now, and what God intends.